CID Special Agent in the United States Army and Sheriff's Office Narcotics Detective. For the past 30 years, John has worked alongside his wife Ellie in various businesses, most notably in real estate, home building, and retail. John served for 9.5 years in the state legislature before his election as state treasurer in 2017 and his re-election in 2019. He serves as the chair of the State Bond Commission and oversees cash management of $64.8 billion on behalf of the citizens of Louisiana. Under John's guidance, more than $278 million in Louisiana unclaimed property has been returned to its rightful owners. And above all, he is a Christian, a husband of 37 years, a father of 2, and a proud grandpa to 3 grandchildren. And we all know he's running for governor. So, Mr. Schroder, will you please come up?
What y'all trying to do? Take all my space here? It's a tall podium. Usually I'm bending over. But it's nice to see everybody, and it's always good to come and visit. I'm not going to tell a lie, though. I did try to skid out and go to LSU where everybody else is. So look, this is the closest I could get to bling and bling in honor of Coach Multi. I stayed in Baton Rouge last night, and my wardrobe is limited when I stay in Baton Rouge. Or I would have had a nice jacket. I think that's going to start a trend now across Louisiana. How about them Tigers, though? That was some exciting, huh? So look, obviously you can see our unclaimed property stuff here. It's a special day at Treasury as we're kicking off our 50th anniversary of the unclaimed property program. And I know a lot of people don't know that, but the program's been around a very long time. And it truly is a success story about our unclaimed property program. It's now up to almost $1 billion, or at $1 billion returned. Sort of help grasp of what that, what $1 billion is. You'd have to spend $1,000 a day for 300 years. And I don't know, as I look around, if anybody's going to be here 300 years from now. But that's a massive amount of money. But this is citizens' money that Treasuries is, charged to manage. And trust me, our unclaimed property team has been working very hard and diligently in returning this money, and more so in the last 4 or 5 years, we've returned more property that's being returned than ever before, and we have to get pretty creative to do it. You wouldn't think so, but we do. So I'd like to, as I said, today's our celebrate our 50th anniversary, and I'm proud to share that 50% of the checks ever written for the program have been cut since 2017, which just happens to coincide with the year I was elected. In other words, all the checks cut to return funds to citizens and businesses and nonprofits since the program began to operate in 1973, 50% of those checks were sent out since 2017. Now, I want to be very clear. I do not take credit for that. We have Kitty LaBelle here, who has Miss Unclaimed Property across America. She has served it in multiple roles, president of the Treasury organization. Y'all are very fortunate to have this public servant work as long as she's had, because she could very easily ride off into the sunset. She's got like 35 or 36 years or so logged in with the state. We really appreciate what she does, but she can't do it alone either. She has a pretty strong team herself at Treasury. Together we've worked to get new policy, legislation, increased our resources to get better outcomes. And this is some of the ways we've done it. We've really helped, it's really helped by utilizing technology. We've worked with the legislature to pass legislation that allows us to partnership with the Department of Revenue by cross-checking at mailing addresses. And these are coming from banks and insurance companies, and they typically lose you because they don't have your address. But as you know, everybody files taxes, and we're able to cross-match those by using addresses and Social Security numbers. And that's typically where the match comes. Last year, we had over 27,125 lucky Louisianians who got checks totaling $4.8 million from this data match that we've done, and we've been doing that now for, I think, 3 years, maybe our 4th year, and we're conducting this match later on, I think in May is when that happens. So if you go to the mailbox and you got that check, make sure you cash it. But we do have a problem with people cashing checks. They just don't believe it, don't trust it, which is one of the reasons why we spend as much time as we do talking about it, educating the public, because if you get a check with the Treasury seal, with my signature on it, it comes with a informational letter to explain what it is. It doesn't tell you where it's from, but we're doing everything we can because we get returned those checks of about 20%, believe it or not. So one of the major things we've done in the last 4 or 5 years, we've moved to a paperless environment where all the docs are secured and maintained in a digital format, and this has allowed us to do and authenticate for payment processes online. We were allocated and we appropriated more money. We added key staff members, including an attorney, and now we have a couple of former law enforcement investigators that help track down owners. And that's really one of the places where we've done, we've improved a lot. The staff on a day-in, day-out basis are doing claims that come online, but we wanted to be more proactive, and it's something that sort of came out of the pandemic. And now we're going after the bigger claimants. We recently returned over $680,000 to an elderly lady in North Louisiana. But we really didn't have the staff or the infrastructure to do that years ago. Now we have people dedicated to that, and we're starting to, as Ms. LaBelle was telling me earlier, we have one that's higher than that they're working on right now, from Louisiana, but don't necessarily live here anymore. But these investigators are out tracking these folks down to make sure we get this money back into these families, because the program's been around for 50 years. And a lot of this money was left by elderly people at a long past. I like telling a story about, I'm 62. You'll have to guess how old my wife is. And we'll be married 38 years next month. But during the pandemic, I had Kitty send me a breakdown because I was getting with legislators to hit the small towns. And my wife's in White Castle. I mean, how many checks could there be in White Castle, right? And there wasn't a lot. So I called my sister-in-law, who still lives in White Castle, and it was about a dozen. It just happened to be like 3 or 4 of them with a one family, and it happened to be the doctor that delivered Ellie when she was born. And it was a significant amount of money. It's a nice way to make friends, too. So we have a dedicated outreach team, which I talked about, that will tackle a lot of the large claims now. State law also allows for Treasury to spend up to 7%, and we spend right about 3%. So that's good as well. We're turning out more checks, more money, and we're spending about 3% of what the law allocates us to operate. And I'm proud of that because they've done exceedingly well. Thanks to the citizens of Louisiana and legislature, we've been smart about this money as well. A couple years ago, and it took me 3 years to get this through the legislature, but now we have an unclaimed property trust fund. My first 3 years in office, we did not have enough money at the end of the year to pay claims. And because of the way the appropriations process works, we couldn't go get money, so we had to wait till we got new money in. Well, that changed. It took a little while, because it's hard to change habits, especially bad habits, at the Capitol. But now they have the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund, where last year we deposited the first $48 million. And the great thing about that is, and it's something that government doesn't do very well, is being patient and save. So what this will do is it saves money that, first of all, is not theirs, that for a long time they just spent whatever was left over each year in the state general fund, which is why we didn't have enough money the following year to do claims. So now that money will get put in a trust fund, and 20 years from now it could be kicking off $30+ million a year of tax-free money that's less of a burden on the taxpayers of Louisiana. It's creative. It raises money for the state without coming to you and asking you for more taxes. So I think that was a great move by the citizens to support that, and I look forward. I don't know if I'll be around 30 years from now, but so there'll be legislators that are here 30 years from now that will thank whoever did it, whoever's idea it was, because, like I said, it creates stability in a program. We'll always have the money there to do it. One year we return almost 70% of the money. And then the next thing is we've just gotten creative. I mean, that's probably where I've used my business sense more than anywhere in Treasury. We've rebranded the program. We enlisted our new help with our mascot, Cash. We're taking names for anybody that would be interested in playing the mascot. We haven't found anybody at Treasury right now who's willing to do it. But he's a cute little guy. It's the tights that got me, so I'm not going tights. So, but anyway, we've rebranded Unclaimed Property. The purple, green, and gold, for those that know me, that comes from my love for Mardi Gras. But we've also partnered with the national, every state in the nation has an unclaimed property program. So early last year, or last October, we launched, the states together launched a nationwide unclaimed property website. And believe it or not, Louisiana led the nation with the most searches. We had 128,000 searches, which produced over 5,500 claims. That was in 24 hours. So it was something we have worked on nationally to raise awareness, because every state has a program. This past February, we launched the Great Employee Give Back, and our first guinea pig was Baton Rouge General. And let me tell you, they have over 5,000 employees, and we did this very quickly. But we recently brought them 572 checks that equaled over $42,000. So since that time, we have partnered with 6 other companies. I just left the East Baton Rouge school system today with the superintendent, that we brought, I think, like almost 100 checks. It was almost $20,000 for the employees, and we hope to be able to do this annually. Our numbers say that about 20% of the employee or the workforce in these big companies have money in the program. So there's nothing they really need to do other than opt in and share the data in a portal that we keep and maintain. and we can do it a lot of different ways. They can either opt in or opt out. And what I suggest is, I don't know if I said this earlier, but I want to reemphasize if I did. We get new money in every year. It's over $100 million now that are coming in annually. So just because you check today, you should check this day next year, because we get new money in every year. We're talking about $1 billion, that could be out and about in our economy. Keep up with myself. We also partnered with the state of Texas late last year, because there's a lot of crossover of Texans coming to Louisiana and vice versa. And that was the first of its kind, and that went very well. We actually sent a team to Beaumont, and they sent a team to Lake Charles, and that worked out really well. We hope to make that an annual thing. We launched recently do we have any veterans here today? One, two, 3. So before you leave, see me. This little lapel pin I have is a veteran pin that I commissioned, and I'm happy to give you guys one. I am an Army veteran, and I'm a law enforcement veteran as well. And the older I get, I guess the more sentimental that I get. But we are working closely with VFWs and American Legion halls because we have a lot of veterans that have money in this system as well. So nothing better than helping our veterans. On May 13th, we'll be back to our annual Lakeside Mall show in Metairie, where we average giving back about $400,000+ annually every year. It's amazing. People will stand in line it's the longest line you'll see. It's incredible. But that is the region, and some people have asked why we do it there. That is where the largest batch of money is in the entire state, in that metro New Orleans area. So I don't need to say this, but I will. I'm extremely proud of the department and the Unclaimed Property Division. They have just done an outstanding job, and we sometimes don't talk about the good things that government does. We always want to sort of spend our time on the negatives, but think about this. You talk about improvement. They went from doing 30,000 claims a year to almost 200,000 a year ago. That's like a 360-something% increase. And I want to brag a little bit, but that's $278 million that we've returned to the citizens of Louisiana. That's just a great story, which is why we picked to go through this today. But we still have a lot of work to do. Roughly 770,000 people across Louisiana have money in this program as we stand here today. On average, about $900 a person. And nationally, there's over 33 million people in that website. So if you live someplace else, and I know we have a lot of media people here who jump around a lot, but you ought to check the states you left to see if you have any money. But I actually have a few surprises today, which is my favorite thing to do as treasurer. So I have some unclaimed property checks. I have one for WVLA TV. Are they here? Yeah? Come on, don't be shy. Now, this is for the station now. Okay, make sure you deliver it. I have one for WAFB. They here? They're at the Assembly Center? All right. WBRZ. I have something for PAR as well. This is not just individuals, and I tell people all that's for the station. This money, we have money for nonprofits, for churches. Here you go. Turn around. Look. You get to be famous. Thank you very much. And then I have one for the advocate. I know the advocate's here today. There you go. So it's important to understand that this money isn't just for individuals. We have probably $75 million in the program for just businesses. I think the last time I checked during the pandemic, we had over 1,200 churches in the program, and I remember bringing a pretty significant check, believe it or not, to the food bank in New Orleans. A check that got sent to them, never got cash, came to unclaimed property, and during the pandemic we were able to bring that to them. So look, it's our job to return this money to its rightful owners. And one of the things too that I think is important, these checks, most of them are average $900. What do you think people are going to do with this money? They're going to go spend it. And they're going to take it home to their towns and spend it. And just think if we could put $1 billion back into the program. So I would ask the media here today to please help us get the word out, because it is as legitimate as a program that's run in state government. And just this Baton Rouge listening audience has probably, I don't know, $150, $130 million alone. So I appreciate you coming today. And again, we're happy to kick off the 50th anniversary for unclaimed property. And just because you didn't have a check today didn't mean there's not something in the program. So please check, especially on your elderly. And just because you might be elderly doesn't mean that your parents didn't have. Like I said, the program's been around for 50 years. And by law, this money is required by law to turn over to the state. And they're all auditors that go out and audit these companies and make them turn the money over. So, like I said, it's been around a long time, and you just never know. We went up to northeast Louisiana bringing this check to this elderly lady that her mother was passed, that had been in the system for a long time. And I always like to tell the story of the homeless gentleman that we found in New Orleans during the pandemic. He was homeless for 15, 16 years after Katrina. And what happened was this was an old CD. And the bank statements, the banks will send a bank statement, and if nothing happens, then they eventually turn it over to the state. Well, our property investigative team were looking at the information, and believe it or not, there was a phone number in the document. And they called the phone number, and guess what? The guy answered. Guy answered the phone. He had one of the government flip phones. He can't text or anything like that. And so I actually went and met this man in New Orleans, and he was, the day I met him, he had 2 Winn-Dixie bags and a black canvas bag. And he had lost his house. He was basically out of his house after Katrina, and had never moved back in. Some contractors beat him out some money. His wife died before Katrina. The son died after Katrina. And then I guess about 4 or 5 months ago, he passed away. The week he passed, we were able to hunt down his estranged son that he hadn't seen in years. And the son went and met with his dad while he was getting hospice care, and they had a meeting of the blood, and now the son and his family have a nice little check and a nice house that was willed to them. So we get to see some amazing things, and people who, like this homeless gentleman, he was done. He was spent. He had totally lost faith in on earth, and I'm happy to say I believe when he passed, he was in a much better place because of this unclaimed property team and some efforts of some local business people in New Orleans. So with that, I'm done. I know y'all are just anxious to ask some questions. I can tell by your smiles. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Schroder, at the last bond commission, there was talk about the investments in certain banks based on their ESG focuses. There were some concerns that excluding some banks could cost Louisiana more money. What's kind of your thoughts, and what's kind of the next steps for that issue?
Well, look, that's a process. There's no exact way to handle this. Obviously, my job as treasurer is to get the best deal I can for the citizens of Louisiana, and that's what I do. It's a complicated subject because in some cases I get to go and negotiate my deals, and the other ones I don't. And the statute sort of guides some of that. So it's threading a needle kind of thing, and it's a daily process, a weekly or a monthly. So as this ESG whole subject continues to evolve, we're just going to have to keep looking at how do we conduct our business and represent what the majority of Louisianians stand for, basically. It's just a complicated issue. Because you have banks who have now waded into politics and policy. In my business world, I go do business with banks for business, not my politics, not how I want to raise my children or anything like that. And the big banks in America have engaged the policy side, and me for one believe that banks should stick to banking and leave the policy setting to the people who you elect to serve you here at the state capitol. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned how for the unclaimed property, that you're working with businesses to enter into like a database so that they can kind of check for their employees. So I know a lot of businesses or individuals may not like, their information going to a government entity. So two questions. One, what are y'all doing to like protect that data? And two, what's that opt-in, opt-out process for the businesses?
Yeah, so we have a secured portal that we manage this program, and our data matches with the Department of Treasury. We're talking thousands of matches. So what we've done with these companies is they provide the information. So some you have to opt out. Others want them to opt in, which we just did that with EBR. But EBR, the school system has 6,000 employees, I think they told me, but we only did about 100. We might have, I don't know how many we actually did, but we only brought about 90 checks. So I would probably say we probably did 500. So 500 people in EBR opted in. Obviously, the biggest return we're going to have is if the more we get to check. So, but I get it. People don't trust this, and that's a big thing I work on a lot. People have lost faith and trust in government, and I get it. But which is one of the reasons we're talking about this today. So to get the word out, it is a secured network, and we don't share our data with anybody. And we've turned to the legislature to help protect that data. Now, you can go on our website at lacashclaim.org, and it's a very easy process. You can type in your name. You could type in if you would have went in today and typed in your TV station, your company, it would pop up. But it wouldn't give you any other details other than you have money in the system, but it's not going to allow you to go any further unless you can answer particular information. So you can check your family and friends, but there's a point where the system blocks you, unless you can give very particular data points to take you through the process. But we really, honestly, knock on wood, we have not had any problems with our data. Obviously, when the whole, I guess 2 years ago when data breaches were happening a lot, we had some attacks. We have people trying to get into the system, but so far we've done a great job. It's secure, and it's not going any place other than the Treasury. So I hate to say this way because something's liable to happen next week. If you can't trust the Department of Treasury at the state level, then we got serious problems. Yes, sir.
Are any of the trust funds invested?
All the trust funds are invested.
Where?
Basically, very low risk treasuries, CDs. It's because it's not like I'm investing your money, so it's all very short term investments that aren't volatile, which is why our return is so low. I mean, when the economy hit rock bottom, we were probably losing money when you consider treasuries run by a percentage of the money we earn, and it was what, it was under 0.0, 0.01, 0.02, so the return was awful, but we manage about 16 billion. Well, actually, it's probably just under 15 now because the market's been so bad, but it was up to 16 billion at one point, and now it's under 15 billion. Yes, sir.
Jay Darden was here a few weeks ago. He said something about how the rating agencies had met with state government to talk about the bond rating. Have you heard anything else about that? And if they do raise the rating, how much?
Yeah, I didn't hear the last part of your question.
What are the benefits if they do raise?
Yeah, so the question is, I know I'm supposed to repeat the question. Jay Darden was here recently, talked about a meeting with the rating agencies. Unfortunately, I could not participate due to a little illness that starts with the letter C. But my staff was there, my bond acquisition staff and my assistant was there. This is probably a subject, and I pushed for this meeting, It was either go there or bring them here. And luckily for us, they were able to come here because I don't like getting on airplanes and I don't like flying. It's a long drive to New York. But it's an issue that I'm very frustrated with because, I spent 9.5 years in the legislature and sat on appropriations for most of that time and going through budget cuts and fighting the last administration on not spending one-time money on reoccurring expenses. And, that was one of the biggest fights I had when I was in the legislature, was trying to force the general administration not to spend one-time money on reoccurring expenses. It took us 6 years to get a bill passed to tell Louisiana and the administration to follow the law because we believe you shouldn't have been able to do it anyway. And that was a big issue from a rating standpoint and some of our budget practices. So some of those practices have been fixed. Due to the pandemic, and look, and I think most of you know this, although I see a lot of new faces in the media, this is someplace I spent a lot of time on. And yes, our rainy day account, I saw it in the newspaper. There's a lot of backslapping going on because our rainy day account's high and our budget stabilization fund is at $1 billion. Guys, that's a result of nothing that the governor nor the legislature did proactively. That's done because that's what the statute says. What would happen with surplus dollars? A certain amount of those surplus dollars has to go into those funds. What I'd like to see more proactivity from the legislature and sort of treat government like they would do in their own world, and they're creating their own retirement system because you have to put money away for retirement and save. We don't do that as a state. We don't create an emergency fund so when we know it's not a matter of if a hurricane coming, we know the hurricane's coming. So why don't we put away some dollars that would help us at a time when we have these horrific storms that kill us because we don't have the cash flow to help these entities off the mat. So these are all things that the rating agencies looked at. Now we're flush with cash. The money that poured down from like manna from the skies from the feds got pushed into the economy. And I'm not here to debate whether it was right or wrong, whether we got the money, but we got it. It got spent, and that has created massive surpluses for the state. That forces money into these rainy day accounts, these budget stabilization accounts, which is good. So I question, all right, so why are we still at the bottom 5, bottom 10 for ratings? And those ratings, why it's so important, because when we borrow money, which we do annually, we get it at a better rate. And I can tell you now, I've been here 14 out of 15 years in some capacity. Never once has the state of Louisiana not paid a bill. Not once. Not even come close. Because in our Constitution, it requires that we pay our debt first. It's probably one of the only states in the nation that has it in their Constitution. And we actually have a fund where all the money filters through before it goes to the state general fund and requires that our debt is paid first. If another state has it, there's not many of them. And we don't get credit from the rating agencies for it. So I get it. They don't like this, they don't like that. But at the end of the day, if I had this performance in my business world, I'd make any loan I wanted from any bank in Louisiana. But we're just not getting what we're due from these rating agencies. And I really believe it's about them making money, and they don't want all these states to be all real good. It sort of creates this, if you look at the metrics, they're split all over the place. But if it was up to me, I wouldn't even use them. But the finance people know we need to. The sophisticated investors who borrow this money look to that rating We used to do 3. I cut it to 2 because I just think it's wasteful, and they're not true. Now, my next step is to meet with the investors. And this is not just a problem in Louisiana. I chair the State Financial Officers Foundation, represented by about 32, 34 states, I believe. And this is a problem going on across America. They treat it more like a business. I get it. But the reality is it has a negative effect on the state. And I know that's a long answer, but these issues are complicated. And, at the end of the day, I told my staff last week, because the new ratings just came out, because we have a bond deal coming up, we were upgraded by one company, and the other ones didn't move. And I totally disagree with it 100%. If I was lending you money and you had the kind of statistics and background that this state has, I'd give you the money in a heartbeat. I'd signature over to you. That's how good the state's doing with their cash right now.
Which rating agency upgraded the state?
I think it was Moody's. Don't quote me. I mean, you can call our office. Maybe Erin's sitting behind you. She should be able to get you that answer if you want to put it in your article. Yes, ma'am.
What are your thoughts on the proposals to eliminate the income tax?
So the question is, what are my thoughts on the proposals to eliminate the state income tax? Not a new subject, been around a long time. Question is how. And as another state prepares to go down that road, I think the consensus is, I hate to say it this way, but this is just the way we do it here in Louisiana. If Mississippi's doing it, we ought to, and it's working, we ought to look at it. So Mississippi's in the process of getting rid of their state income tax. It's not something that you pass a bill or pass a law and just snap your fingers and it's done. It's a long process. I think North Carolina did it or is in the process of doing it over like a 20-year period, and they're only like in year 6, 5 or something. But I think the state of mind from most people you talk to, most citizens of Louisiana believe we need to get rid of it. And I agree. We do need to get rid of it. The problem is how. Whereas in Louisiana, our income tax makes up about 40 cents on every dollar that comes in. And I like playing this little game, since the cameras can't see what y'all do, but I say a little game because I get asked this almost every place I go to speak. But let me tell you the question I ask. And again, the cameras can't see, but I'd like for everybody to answer this honestly. Who wants to pay a state property tax? Raise your hand. Just for the record, one person raise their hand. Who wants to pay a higher sales tax? Raise your hand. I want the record to reflect nobody raised their hand. And if you look at the states that have gotten rid of income tax, they've done it through a couple different ways. Tennessee, highest sales tax with Louisiana on record. On record. Well, we're already there. Where do you go? Now, I don't support renewing the increase in the sales tax. That should go off end of next year, I believe it is. But the devil is in the detail. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't go to work and do it, because I think from a mentality standpoint, people who look at Louisiana and want to move to Louisiana put that very high on their list. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it's a mindset. And I've told some people that. Yeah, the numbers may not work, but the mindset and the perception is we need to do it. I'm happy to work on that project. It's not something new, but you have to replace 40 cents on a dollar. That, ladies and gentlemen, will not be an easy task, because you're going to have to go take it from somewhere. And I would also say this. And look, I'm a small business owner. My wife and I have been in business for 31 years. I deal with a lot of people, Ellie and I do. And we have this mindset in Louisiana that we want things, but we don't want to pay for it. And I can tell you, I thought I knew things as a member of the State Appropriations Committee, but then when I became state treasurer and you see it firsthand, there's a lot of services we provide at Treasury that we don't get paid for. And now, as the administrator and the CEO of the Treasury, I have to manage that. You know, you don't do anything for free, but we want government to. It doesn't work, ladies and gentlemen. If you want government to provide a service, it has to be paid somehow, because nobody on my staff, believe it or not, is coming to work today for free. Nobody. So that's a great question, and it's going to take quite a bit of work to get through it, but I do support getting rid of it. Yes. Let's try to get through the one before we go back to double dipping. Yes, sir.
The ITEP, the state ITEP program has been in the news a bit with the Folgers issue, and I was just wondering if elected as governor, would you support maintaining the current local say in the program, or would you seek to roll that back?
Look, I think we need a major education on that process. I'm an entrepreneur, and you don't get unless you invest, okay? If you don't invest, you're not going to get a return. So I read that article. To say that New Orleans is going to lose $2 million, my thought process is, well, if you don't have the company there at all, what happens? So I think everybody needs to understand, and you need to have some entrepreneurs in the room to help explain this. I mean, these companies don't locate here if they're not getting some benefit, because they can go someplace else where they are. But I do support the locals having a say. And they got to deal with the infrastructure, education, everything. They should have a say. But we need to come up with a game plan, because, look, Louisiana's a poor state. If anybody doesn't know this, a poor state. 4.6 million people, 2 million on Medicaid, at least as of today, 900,000 on Medicare. For you non-mathematicians, 65% or so. So it makes me real nervous when we talk about the ITEP, because I know what these companies bring to the table. And I recently had a conversation with one of these companies, and their attitude was they don't know where they're going to spend the money. They don't mind investing in the community, but they want to see it invested where it has an impact. So I think there's a trust problem. There's a big communication problem, and I would, as the governor, I'll sit and try to lead us through those discussions and see where we can get. Ultimately, I think if you say you don't want a company to relocate to your parish, you probably ought to have that right. But I mean, I talked to a company the other day that located, they were supposed to go, I think, in St. John, St. James, and didn't, and they went to a parish that would give it to them. So I think that's an issue that will take some leadership, and to sit down and to try to come up with a game plan, because ultimately, I sort of look at it like this, especially being in business. Sometimes I didn't care if we built in this subdivision or that subdivision. We just needed to get something built in my business. If we couldn't go do it in your subdivision, we'd go do it over there. So my interest would be, if you can't do it in ABC parish, can we go do it in EDF parish? So I mean, obviously we don't want to lose business, but we also have to be cognizant that these parishes are under great restraints, and we already have to come to Baton Rouge hat in hand on enough stuff already. Yes, sir.
A couple of minutes ago, we were talking about, we touched on the subject of big state government data trust issue. Did I hear you say a bit ago that the unclaimed fund, it's been around for a long time, 50 years, and but that money typically, as it came in, the general fund would wash it up, and your office made some changes at the legislature,
right,
where you could make sure that money is getting back into the hands of the people who it belongs to.
Correct. So what happened in my first 3 years in office as treasurer, we immediately increased outcomes, to the credit of the lady sitting behind you. We get to the end of those those out years, or not out years, to the end of the fiscal year, and we would run out of money. So I went and sat down with the leadership, with Jay Darden, Senate President, but there was no way to get us any money because you have to be appropriated the money. So what happened was they got very used to taking whatever was left at the end of the year and spending in the state general fund. So when I went and asked the first time, they told me no. So I proposed some legislation the next session. I couldn't get it out to the Senate. House passed it. I don't know what it is about this House of Representatives compared to the Senate. Well, let me rephrase that. I know exactly what it is. It's called politics. Okay? The House, 100%. Sent it to the Senate. Couldn't get it out of a Republican Senate Finance Committee 3 times. So, being a nice military, hard-headed guy I can at times, I had my legal counsel do some research. Nowhere in the law could I find that it said the money should have been being spent in the state general fund. Nowhere. And I was convinced we were right. So if you won't pass my law, I ain't giving you the money no more. And that's how I got it passed. Because in the 3rd year, I was holding $52 million. And I felt like the law was on my side. So I said, if you want the money, you're going to have to send the Marines to get it. You're not getting it no more. So it came down to a meeting with the governor. And they told me that they would support the constitutional amendment that I had proposed through State Senator Mike Fessy out of Terrebonne Parish. And when they supported that bill, on your behalf, I negotiated and relented on the money. And so they got that. That was their last taking. So now what happens is it went to the ballot. It passed by like almost 70%. I don't remember the number, but it was overwhelming support to set up this trust fund. So the good thing, first of all, the money does not belong to the state of Louisiana. It belongs to you. It doesn't even belong to the taxpayers of Louisiana. Every dollar has a name on it. Our job, or Miss Kitty's job and her staff's job, is to go find those individuals. That is a tough task. So, but now what's happening, I think, is a win-win for everybody. The money that comes to the state that we're supposed to be the stewards of, we're now the stewards of. Sits in a trust fund. The deal was that money now, that trust fund creates an interest, now rolls into the state general fund. And they can spend that whatever they want. And as I said earlier in my opening comments, that being patient, that thing's going to kick out some serious dollars 20 years from now, if the market stays where it is. So, sometimes, playing hardball works. Sometimes it doesn't. But I did that because I felt like the law was on our side. And one thing I did learn, don't ever tell a lawyer to sue you, because they will. Y'all didn't think that was funny? Yes, sir.
Is there something that the Bond Commission or the Treasury Department could do to force the Department of Transportation, specifically in Public Works, to hold public hearings on such important issues as flooding and transportation issues like that?
Yeah, I would say this but legally, no. But I would tell you, as a leader of this state and one of 10 or so statewide elected officials in Louisiana, that almost seems like communism. That you wouldn't at least have a public meeting so the public can understand what a project will and will not do, what impact, negative or positive. I've heard that a couple times now. You got a new DOTD secretary. Maybe now's the time to push that. But I've heard that comment before. I'll have a meeting with anybody. Anybody. Don't take it the wrong way. You want to meet with the treasurer? The treasurer's having a meeting. Just got to find it in a day. you know. But I can't possibly imagine somebody who's here to serve people in the government capacity will not have a meeting or a public meeting. That's almost criminal in my mind. It's very negligent.
And that's all the time we have. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.